And so today I'm going to share with you my top 5 secret ingredients, just so that you don't make the same mistakes that a lot of programs are currently making. One of the first secret ingredients is that change is constant, but not all change is equal. And so where a lot of people make the mistake is that they're using exactly the same strategy, the same approach, and the same methodology for every single change initiatives. But that's actually a mistake in itself, because not everything is the same. So let me just show you one of the models we use when, one of the tools we use when we're looking at how to decide what approach and strategy should you use for your change initiative. Essentially, there's 20 criteria that you want to measure the risk of your project and your program in terms of change. And as we look at what some of these are, they're going to include things such as the breadth of the change, not only in terms of the size. Is it only impacting a small group of people or the entire company? Also considering how big is the company? Is it multi-market, or is it just one particular location? So part of the analysis of doing your risk assessment and your high-level change impact assessment is to understand, firstly, the size of the change, the duration of the change. Is it very short, or is it going to be a number of years? Now, my secret ingredient number 2 is understanding what is the most effective technique to significantly improve your adoption rate. Now, one of the mistakes that people often make is that they think that they need to move everybody at the same time, but you actually don't, because that's never going to happen. When you introduce a new initiative, even when you're looking at products, you don't have mass take up straight away. So what you want to use is this particular model. And the model that I'm going to introduce you to is the adoption bell curve. And when you understand how to do this really well, then you're going to get a lot more momentum, because ideally what you actually want is to create a movement of excitement and enthusiasm. And you're going to use this particular model so that you're going to identify the early adopters. They will bring their first followers and so forth.
And the question really becomes, why? Why would I build Extend My Runway? Why would I zero in on neuroscience? Why would I zero in on digital nudging? Well, let's take a look. The context really is the major driver. And depending upon where you're sitting today, you may very well be in an aging society where people are living longer. But longevity is really the major contextual driver. What's basically happened is that in the 20th century, on average, we have gained 30 additional years of longevity. 30 additional years. And that's primarily because of physical health. So maybe we're exercising a little more, maybe we're eating a little more nutritious, but medical care has dramatically improved. Pharmacology is allowing people to take drugs and live longer. Need a blood thinner? We've got it for you. But all of this adds up to a longer life. Now let's put that longer life in the context of Asia. Singapore, where I am seated today, is the world's fastest aging society. We became an aged society, as you can see from this graph from UOB Bank, in 2018. So the crossover happened from a youthful society to an aged society. And this basically raises some really important questions. If Singapore is aging dramatically fast, what does that mean for people? What does that mean for organizations? What does that mean for HR and talent solutions? Okay, but Singapore is but one example. This data is from UNESCO looking at Greater Asia. Now, this is a beautiful example of what's happening in Singapore and in so many of our neighboring countries. When you look on the left at 1950, you can see the demographics. The population is shaped like a pyramid. We had more young people than old people. And that's the way societies have been for all of human history.
Every time you think of eating spaghetti, or any noodles for that matter, I want you to remember what we will discuss today. And I want you to reflect on what you'll do if your sauce doesn't taste, it doesn't smell, or it doesn't look the way you envisioned it. Will you stick to it? Will you stick to your same strategy, or will you pivot? Will you keep your radars out for changes that are happening in this VUCA world? You may or may not know this concept, but everything we do has a CPOC. Now, what is a CPOC? In case you don't know, you should know as a leader. It's everything around our suppliers and our customers and what happens in between. Now, when you're thinking about your own business, where do you start? Do you start with your customers in mind, or do you start with the suppliers in mind? For example, if we're making our spaghetti sauce, do you start with the ingredients in mind, or do you start with what you want your spaghetti and tomato sauce to look like? Different people start in different places, and we'll look a bit into that. Did you know that some spaghetti and bolognese, for example, you can get for $3 for lunch, whereas in some restaurants, I think the highest price in the world for a spaghetti bolognese is $40. What makes the difference between the two bowls of spaghetti? So we're going to focus on the IPO, the inputs, the process, and the outputs. And a lot of that has to do with people. Even the simple recipe of spaghetti and tomato sauce, everything you do has to do, who is going to eat your spaghetti? Are you making it for your kids? Or are you making it for the Queen of England? Who are you making it for? And that makes a big difference.
So first, let me just ask a quick question for El Kwan. El, if you were to say, what is the one, I mean, you talk a lot about innovation and using the opportunity of, this COVID-19 to actually disrupt, if you like, right? So you spoke about that. Now, tell us a little bit more about that, because, that kind of thought process just doesn't happen overnight. But something deep must have been felt. What was it that you felt? And what is it that your team felt so that you guys had to do what you had to do?
Right. So totally agree. Innovating and constantly innovating, because you don't just do it once, is not something that it just happens. No, it has to be a conscious effort for you, your company, and your team to be constantly innovating. We never stop, because the world is changing very fast. That's why you hear things like it's VUCA world, and now it's even hyper VUCA. So if you say I've innovated last month, that's it. I think that's the beginning of the descent. So we have to constantly innovate.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate your comments on that. I just want to have another question for Huda here. I just wanted to kind of ask you, as leaders continue to lead, and I know that various kinds of difficult decisions are out there, how important it is to kind of, embrace diversity of ideas and viewpoints as you go through this?
Amazing question, Dr. Krishnan. Thank you so much for asking this. All right, so to answer your question, Dr. Krishnan, it's about diversity, about inclusivity, like how can we put all of this in place as leaders? As leaders, yes, inclusivity is important, diversity is important. But even so, as individuals, I wouldn't say just leaders, individuals, we always need to remember that in our own differences is where strength comes in. Because we have differences, that's what makes us interesting. It is what makes us unique. So
Brilliant.
yeah, we need to embrace that first and foremost, before we go out there and tell our team that you guys have to be embrace diversity. So embrace that first, and you will see that in your own organization. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that lovely answer, Huda, and I completely second everything that you said. I think that when you have differences, actually something constructive can actually come out. If you actually have a very, very, congruent thinking, if you like, then actually there is less room to innovate. There's less room to actually come up with more constructive ideas. So anyways, on that note, I wanted to invite Dr. Panoy to speak and say, and I wanted to just ask a question, probably the most, and I'm just guessing this, and I don't know whether this is right or wrong, but one of the things that when so many different people from different industries, different backgrounds, all become part of your ecosystem, what would you think is the number one thing that is important in order to build that ecosystem?
The most important that in our ecosystem.
Correct.
I think so when we start a business, we need to build the ecosystem. It's not easy because when we talk with the director of the hospital, it's different when we talk with the insurance, when we talk with the city, when we talk with the director of for the government sector. I think when I'm a doctor, I think when we start the ecosystem, very important is a doctor. We start from like a specialist doctor. Doctor have a patient. Both of the ecosystem need patient or need customer. So if you have a customer, you can negotiate. You can make the benefit for your ecosystem. So if you have a customer, it is an easy way to negotiation to make a business with them. Yes.
Okay. So if I can kind of extrapolate that, can I extrapolate that to trust, to building trust with others?
Yes, I think for me, the trust is for the first when you practice at a startup way, the trust is for the first is a team. The team, especially is a management team.